No matter what type of business you're in, there are some universal requirements, right? Universal requirements that all businesses must have. The first requirement is that you understand what people want. You have to know what your market wants, whatever type of business you're in. The second requirement is then getting their attention, right? You have to attract customers. And then, of course, you have to deliver on your promise. Delivering on your promise is basically when you produce something, any product you see out in the market, or if you produce something, then you are essentially telling your customers, or your potential customers, that this product performs this function, or it has this specific reason for its existence. This is how it will benefit your life. This is what it's going to do for you. Correct? And that leads to customer satisfaction. When a customer is satisfied, think of yourselves as consumers. When you buy something and you're satisfied with the value that product gives you, do you go back and buy it when you need it again from that same person or that same place or that same product? You do that because you're satisfied with what that product has done for you, right? So customer satisfaction is key because satisfied customers means repeat customers, and that's what you build a business upon. And of course, profit. You cannot produce something for $10 and sell it for $5. You will close down. That's just basic, right? So your company has to make a profit. Whatever you're producing, there's ways to calculate all of that. We'll get into that later. But at the very basic, you have to make a profit. So these are some universal requirements of business, no matter what industry, whatever it is you're producing, selling, whether it's a service, it's a commodity, these principles apply to you. Now, we talk about generating business. The very first step, if you want to do business, is obviously you need an idea. It's not just going to come from anywhere. So how do you actually go about doing all of this? Before you start a business, obviously, the first thing you need to do is generate those ideas. And we will go through that exercise in a little while. But after you generate ideas, see, because as entrepreneurs, or as aspiring entrepreneurs, we're not content with just one idea, right? So we come up with many ideas. And after you've done all that, that's when you have a product or a service. The end result of generating ideas and then screening those ideas is you will filter it down into a product or a service. And that's what you'll be left with. Obviously, the first thing, and we've spoken about this before, is pursuing your passions, right? Look at your hobbies. What are some of the things you like to do in your spare time? What are some of the skills you have, right? Something that you love doing, but you've never thought about monetizing it. It's something you just do as a hobby. Something you might be doing for your family, for your little nieces and nephews, for your cousins, for your siblings. You have this skill and you're doing something for them. And you're just doing it for fun because you love doing it. But then you've never thought about a way to monetize that. Some way to earn money off that. So the very first thing is you look at yourself. You look at the things that you love to do, your hobbies, your passions, your skills, some things that you're good at, that you like doing. After that, another place to begin is looking for opportunities around you. Brainstorm. Get your family, get your friends together and just talk, hash it out. Let's start some business. What do we do? What can we do? What skills do we have collectively? And let's do something. What resources do we have available? If we put all our resources together, what can we do? Right? So brainstorm. Another thing is go traveling. If you have the power or the ability or financial stability to go traveling, overseas or even locally, around Fiji, do that. I was very fortunate that I was able to afford to travel. And I grew up in Australia, and then I moved to Fiji, and then I moved to Malaysia, and then I moved back to Fiji. The thing about traveling is, how does traveling actually help you come up with business ideas? And this is why I will always prefer to do business in Fiji or in a developing country, is because there's so much potential for growth. Because we're still a developing country, we don't have everything. Not all the services and products you find overseas are available here. It doesn't mean that they can't be produced here. And that's the beauty about developing countries. You can import, not products. When we think about importing, we only think about importing something physical. You spend money overseas, you put stuff in a container and you import it. That's not the only kind of importing you can do. You can import ideas. Things that are available overseas that you know there might be a market for here. You just import that idea and you produce it here at a lower cost, right? And you expose Fiji to these innovative products that are available elsewhere but not in Fiji yet. So go traveling, you'll expose yourself to those types of things. Even when I say travel locally, some things you might find in more rural areas of Fiji that there's actually an urban market for. They might have something that makes their lives easier in some way that people in urban centers don't know about, right? It can be anything. You just have to get out there and start seeing the world as one big place for opportunities, one big, marketplace for business ideas. Another thing is you look for unfulfilled demand. This is something that's quite common in Fiji. Unfulfilled demand is basically when there's an existing product in the market or an existing company that's providing some type of service, but because the market is so big, they can't supply the entire market. So like, for example, our milk industry. We do not produce enough milk locally to supply demand. Honey industry, same thing. Although we have so many farmers and so many distributors of honey, we do not produce enough to meet local demand. So there are a lot of things out there in this country that you can look at that businesses are doing, but the market is just too big. So there's potential for you to get a piece of that pie. Of course, we've spoken about this many times, problem solving. Look for ways to solve people's problems. Everyone has some type of problem. We all have many problems. So if you can come up with a product or even a service, that solves some type of problem, then you can monetize that and make money off that. Fill a niche. A niche is basically, if I can dumb it down non-textbook way, is a highly specific market, right? Say for example, I want to sell something only to the expat market of Fiji, only expatriates, no one else. The product or the service that I'm offering, locals won't want it, or maybe they will, but I'm not catering to them. It's very high value. I need, people who are earning lots of money to pay for it. So you go super niche. You fill a niche market. It's very specific markets. Of course, consider your resources. What do you have in terms of, that can be financial resources, right? Human resource, physical resources. You might have tools, but not the expertise. So you can go and learn the expertise to use those tools, right? So just look at the resources you have available to you. Don't always look at, I need to start something where I need to buy so much crap to start, right? I need to buy this and I need to buy that. I need to, invest so much money because I don't have anything. But you have something, you have many things. You just have to look around you with that perspective. How can I use this to make money, right? So look at the resources around you. Also look at trends. This is another common way to come up with ideas. What's trending? There was a time when you would see a lot of fast food restaurants popping up, right? Cheap, quick, easy food on the go. But what's the trend now? Everyone's looking for healthy alternative. There's a lot of, with the rise of NCDs and stuff in Fiji, there's a lot of promotion by government and other organizations for healthy living, healthy diets, healthy everything, So that's a trend. People are moving away from all of that to healthy living. Fashion industry works the same way. What's trending? What are people wearing? What kind of shoes are people wearing? What kind of shirts and dresses and all of that? So it's all about looking at your market in terms of what's trending. How were things before in that particular industry, and how are things now? What are people doing more now? Existing products and services. Look at things that already exist. And how can you improve that? Is there anything different you can do with that same product? Is there any way you can improve on it? Maybe add something to it, or subtract something from it, right? Same thing with the service. Is there anything you can do to make that service better that no one else is doing? Or maybe if you water down that service, offer a little less, there might be a market who can't afford to pay thousands of dollars for that, but they can pay hundreds of dollars for that, right? So you look at existing products and services and how you can add value to them. Complementary products. Complementary products are basically products that go well when paired with other products. Big companies do this all the time. And you've seen it. All of you have seen complementary products and how large companies use complementary products to market their goods. You take someone like Nescafe. When you buy a can of Nescafe and they give you a mug attached to it, right? That mug is a complementary product. Now, do you think Nescafe actually set up a factory to make these porcelain mugs and whatnot? A company that deals primarily with coffee, do you think that they have a factory where they produce mugs? Most likely not, right? You can buy oven trays with, oven mitts on them. A company that produces oven trays, do you think that they set up a garment factory to produce oven mitts? No. So someone is making it and selling it to these people to be used as complementary products. So likewise, you can look at the products out there and what other products would go well with it. Then you have substitute products. Substitute products are, if a product is used for a specific reason, is there any other product that can perform the same function? So one product might be, costing $100 or something, and it does exactly the same thing that you can produce in $20 and sell for 50 or 80, right? The production, it might cost you less to make. So you look at substitute products. What other product can fulfill this need or can solve this problem? Distribution channels. Distribution channels are basically where you put your product. Let's say you have a product already, right? You usually talk about distribution channels when we talk about coming up with your marketing, and you've got your product, you've got your marketing and all of that sorted. Then you have to figure out distribution channel. Distribution channel is where am I going to put my product so that my customers can come and buy it. That's what a distribution channel is. But sometimes when you're thinking about ideas, you can reverse engineer it. You can go to these stores and you can study the store. What kind of customers come to buy what? Which market do they serve? Is there some type of product that I could sell to this market that comes to this particular store? It might be a hardware store, it might be a supermarket, whatever, it might be any kind of store. So if you can reverse engineer it and then look at who's shopping there and say, okay, this market comes here to buy this, I think there's a product I can offer this distribution channel or these customers as well. So that's another way to think of business ideas. Government. People don't often think about supplying anything to government, but government is one of the biggest institutions we have. And a government is always there. It's a market that never disappears. There's always going to be a government. people working for government ministries and other, statutory bodies, they'll always be there. They won't grow old and disappear and die off. The people might, but those positions will always be filled, right? So that's a market that will always be there, and people are doing that now. Some people I know of designers and people make clothes, uniforms, they just target government institutions, right? Government ministries, government statutories. So also look at what you can offer to maybe government. Research and development, because you're in university right now, USP, you guys actually have access to a lot of tools for R&D. And research and development is also one of the best ways to figure out what type of business you can get into. And this usually is costly, right, R&D in a lot of places, but because, as I said, you're university students, you have a ton of resources available here. So you can actually conduct some R&D. Not only that, if you go to the archives in USP, I'm sure that a lot of research and development has already been done. You could probably find a lot of papers in your archives where there might be some business idea just sitting there waiting to be executed on, waiting to be implemented. Other ways is you can develop a new idea through a list of related issues. These are basically, you look at a product and you say, okay, what other way can I use this? You can also modify existing products. Change what it does. You can maybe just change the way it looks. You could also magnify something, right? You can add more elements to it. Or whatever it might be, more time. If something takes less time to do, you can add more time. If, like games, sometimes a game might take 30 minutes to play, but they want to play for 2 hours. So you add in elements that would make it longer. Or, you can make something stronger or larger. There's so many ways to magnify something, extra value, right? If you're cooking something, maybe you can put in more ingredients. You can make something in a larger volume or something. If something only comes in pack of 2, you can start selling pack of 10. So, just like you can exaggerate a product and make it bigger, you can also make something smaller. Something that might fit in your pocket, right? If there's some product that people carry around in bags and you can find a way to shrink it to fit in people's pockets. Right now there's a trend for wallets, right? This is a normal size wallet, but right now there's a trend that even this is too big. It carries too much crap in it. You have receipts, you have all of that. So there's a trend right now to make things smaller. So you find people making right now small wallets, right? What they call front pocket wallets. Tiny. All they have space for is cash and cards, that's it. No coins, no receipts, none of that stuff. So you can look at things that you could make smaller. Rearrange. Maybe you can take something apart and put it in a different way to make something else, another pattern, another layer, right? So you can rearrange things. Or you can reverse things, turn it upside down, turn it backwards, turn it forward. There's so many things that you can do. The point is, you just have to open your mind to all of these different types of approaches that you can take when thinking about business ideas. The possibility of doing so many things. You have to realize that it's always possible to do a variety of things. Combining 2 things together. Are there any 2 things that you can combine? Right? Not just physically combine, but combine the purpose for that product. Everyone has seen one of that too. Have you ever seen a keychain with a bottle opener on it? That's combining a keychain with a bottle opener. A keychain has a specific purpose. It's to carry keys. A bottle opener has a very different purpose, to open bottles. They combined it and made a keychain bottle opener. Right? So sometimes you can combine 2 products that do completely different things, but they have a use for it. Instead of carrying 2, now you just carry 1. Right? So it's not just about physically combining, but combining ideas together. So what is an ideal business? We've spoken about, all the different ways that you can generate some of these business ideas. But what is an ideal business, right? What characteristics does an ideal business have? First of all, now I'm talking about the ideal business idea, sorry, let me clear that. First of all, it has to be feasible. It has to be technical feasible, meaning you have to have enough capital to actually start it, right? And not just that, it has to be profitable. You have to be able to make money off it, right? So you have to be able to invest, whether it's time or cash or whatever it is. So it has to be feasible. The idea has to be feasible, first of all. An ideal business is one that requires no initial investment. Okay? I'm talking about the ideal business. If you can have all of these characteristics for your business idea, then you have the ideal business idea. Okay? So when you're generating your ideas, think about these things. If you can check all of these off, you're ready to start, basically. Right? The other thing is, it has to have a market for it. You have to know where that market is, and you have to be able to measure that market. How big is that market? Of course, people need your product or your service. Right? That business idea that you have or that you're going to come up with, then there has to be, when you look out into the market, when you look out to the people you're selling to, there has to be a gap in that market that exists, right? First of all, you have to make sure there's a market. Then you have to make sure that that market actually needs my product. Because sometimes when you're thinking about market, you might think, okay, you might find a market where they are, or they're a market that will buy your thing because they can afford it, right? It might be appealing to them. But do they actually need it? So if you can come up with an idea that these people actually need, then you have an ideal business idea. Of course, you need a dependable source of supply for all those materials that you need to actually produce your product, right? So when you have an idea, sometimes we think, okay, I'm going to do this or I'm going to make this. Where do I get my materials from? So then you go shop around for materials and you might find only one store that sells what you need, but they don't always stock that product, right? Maybe after 3 months they'll run out and then they'll say next shipment is coming in 6 months. So now for 6 months you can't produce your product. So you need a reliable source for the materials you need to produce your product, right? It has to be reliable, it has to be dependable. And if there's no government regulation surrounding your idea, no specific or special regulations, then that's a more ideal business to go into, because the wheels of bureaucracy turn very slow in developing nations, unfortunately. So much red tape, so much running around for the smallest thing. And when you're just starting out, that's something that actually demotivates you, it deters you, And it's deterred not just small businessmen, but people who have the capacity to be larger businessmen, to be exporters and whatnot. But people sometimes don't want to export their produce, like, in agriculture or whatever, because there's so much red tape they have to go through. Biosecurity, this, and, whoever else, there's so much red tape, so they just don't bother. So if you can come up with an idea where there's not much government regulation, regarding it, then that's an ideal business idea. And of course, something that requires zero to little labor force. This is important because when you're starting out, most likely you're going to be the only one working, right? So to bring that vision, to make that vision a reality, you don't want to have to depend on 30 people right from the get-go to produce that. right? Your idea. You want to be able to do something that you plus maybe 2 or 3 other people can do, or essentially you alone. You have it, but as you expand, of course you need more people, right? But by then you have the money to invest in more people and more resources. But initially, your idea should be one that you can work on alone, right? The physical, that sweat equity I talked about on day 1, you have to be able to give all the sweat equity. If you need another 20 people, then it might be time to think about another idea, right? Also, you have to look at the market, the turnover of the product. Is it something that people will buy frequently, right? Or is it something that you're just going to buy once and never buy again? Tax, right? Some items you pay such high tax for if you're getting stuff in from overseas. Very high tax, right? So you have to see the tax incentives that you get for starting that type of business. Sometimes, or most of the times in these smaller businesses, if you're using local resources, this is not an issue at all, right? There's no tax issue. The other thing is distribution system. You want your products to have an established and reliable distribution system, but also one that is willing to actually sell your product for you, or to store your product for you, right? Sometimes not everyone wants to sell your product. They don't want to provide you with that distribution channel. They don't want to give you a space in their store. Not everyone wants to, so you have to find that right distribution channel that actually wants to, that sees the value that your product brings to their customers, right, or to their store. And of course, you have to be mindful of product liability. You don't want your product to harm or endanger people's lives, people's health in any kind of way, right? Basically, you don't want people to sue you if something goes wrong with your product, right? So whatever business idea you're thinking of, make sure it's something you can't be sued for. Like, nothing goes wrong and then people sue you and take everything. So product liability is something